there, it's Gary Parrish. Welcome back to the CBS Sports Eye on College Basketball Podcast, where we sometimes discuss camel fighting, dodo birds, and leaky black. Matt Norlander is here with me. If you're watching on YouTube, you know what to do to the like button. Shouts to Brandon Davies. If you haven't yet, subscribe to the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube channel. Please also do that while you're here. Let's get into it. There are two wild stories, both originating in the SEC. We will get to those, I promise. But I did want to start with some actual basketball and the top 10 matchup between Blue Bloods that we got this weekend. The final score, it was Kansas 92, North Carolina 89. Bill Self's Jayhawks, they led by as many as 20, then trailed by 4 with less than 4 to play before KU outscored North Carolina 9-2 in the final 3:14 of the game to win it by 3. Hunter Dickinson led all scorers with 20. R.J. Davis missed 12 of the 15 shots he attempted. Norlander, I know you had your eyes on it Friday night. What'd you make of the scene inside Phog Allen?
Well, first of all, you opting not to start with dudes fighting on a plane to lead the podcast is yet another big upset to start this first week of the season. But I think I see what you're doing here. Keep the audience, keep them dangling around. Don't worry. We're going to get to the fight on Auburn's plane and how they responded. This game, obviously, Kansas, Carolina happened before the Auburn one. A big picture before we get to the results and to the teams. It was just awesome. I mean, we're coming live here on Sunday night, and I just watched Gonzaga hold on against Arizona State, and that environment was better than anyone across the NFL I watched on Sunday. Just amazing, amazing environment. Obviously, Phog Allen brought it significantly as well. And yet another just really good win for college basketball to have known entities, big-time brands, meaningful schools, Carolina, Kansas. They hadn't squared off at Kansas since 1960. They finally get it done. And as this game is going on Friday night, I'm like, why can't we get this? I'm not even every year, but why can't we get like top 10, top 15 all-time programs playing every single season in on-campus environments like this? It was tremendous, and so I was very appreciative that we got it. We'll get it again next year between these two schools when Kansas makes the return trip out to Chapel Hill. Carolina, there are a few schools this weekend that I think they lose, but in how they were able to gather themselves and make a fight of it, you take the moral victory, I guess, even though you always want to get the outright victory there. But to come back from being down 20 was significant to me with UNC and being able to really push. You got really impressive performances out of Seth Trimble. He had 19 in this game to lead the Tar Heels. Elliot Cadeau had some good moments. He had 12. Cadeau actually missed the 3 as time expired to clinch the game for Kansas's behalf. R.J. Davis had 16. Far from a perfect game, obviously, but they were able to actually play with some good resolve and really get the game in some doubt and get a significant free throw advantage, which you almost never see in that building, obviously. So good on UNC. What did you see? And I'll kind of save the Kansas takeaways for your end. You, of course, kept KU at number 1 in your top 25 and 1 rankings. I know you were and by the way, reminder for our listeners, GP was actually working for CBS Sports Network on Friday night. So I don't know how much you caught via just highlights, DVR, whatever, but kind of big picture takeaways and just Kansas being able to hold off Carolina. What are your main takeaways from it?
I went back and put my eyes on it. As Bill pointed out afterward, he was pleased with the first half, not pleased with the second half. It's the classic type of game where somebody sits down in the press room and they think they're asking a great question every time. And they say something like, Hubert, what'd you say to him at halftime? Everybody's so eager to find out what you said at halftime. It's usually not that interesting. But if you're Carolina, you don't like going down by 20, but you do like that you came back on the road, actually took a 4-point lead in among the most hostile environments you could ever be in. And I'm with you. I don't know why we can't get more of these. Even on Sunday we had Wake Forest, Michigan, and that's fine. Like I'm glad they're playing each other, but both of those games, it's a 2-year series. And, one game was played off campus in Carolina today. Next year, the game will be played off campus in Detroit. Just things always look better and feel better on campus. Kansas should be playing inside Allen Fieldhouse. Gonzaga should be playing inside the Kennel. I always prefer those types of games. I wish, like you, that we could get more of them. I know folks in the preseason had a lot of concerns about North Carolina's front court. because it was unproven. Armando Bacot, now lives down here by me as opposed to in Chapel Hill. Jalen Withers and Jalen Washington have both been like serviceable so far. Withers got 11 points, 9 rebounds against Kansas. He's averaging 10.5 points, 9.5 rebounds, through 2 games this season. Washington, he's the 6'10 junior. He got 7 and 9 against Kansas. He's now averaging 7.5 and 6.5. So even though North Carolina isn't undefeated, so not where you'd want to be, I think the early returns from those front court unproven guys have been somewhat positive. With Kansas, I think the most interesting thing about the Jayhawks through these first 2 games of the season is that you're seeing exactly what the issue was last season now become a strength. And it was exactly what Bill Self talked about towards the end of last season. The lack of depth just killed them. And he said he wanted to go out and have 8 starter level players heading into this season. Even with Kevin McCullough healthy last year, Kansas only had 5 guys they could play. Without him, it went down to 4. It was Hunter Dickinson, KJ Adams, Johnny Furphy, DeJuan Harris. Could not rely on anybody other than that. Nobody else could play. So Kansas ends up finishing after McCullough goes down, tied for 5th in the Big 12. As you know, that's the worst finish ever for Bill Self. But then he gets into the transfer portal and goes and takes other people's starters and makes them his role players. So like Zeke Mayo is the Summit League Player of the Year, but now he's coming off the bench. He got 21 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists against Carolina. AJ Storr was Wisconsin's starting guard, leading scorer. He's now coming off the bench. He got 13 points, 3 assists, 2 rebounds. Floyd Badunga, he's the 5-star freshman. He's off the bench. He got 8 points, 8 rebounds. Last season, Kansas only averaged like 12 points per game from its bench. Game 1 against Howard, they got 45. Game 2 against North Carolina, they got 42. Last season, the bench accounted for 24.1% of Kansas's minutes played, which ranked 310th in the nation, according to KenPom. Right now, that number is up to 34.7%. That ranks 87th. They're suddenly in a position to rely on their bench, and they're relying on it. And so far, it's been one of the best benches in the country.
Zeke Mayo had 21 off the bench. He had a few really big buckets. We talked about him, obviously, on the Friday show, and for him to show up that way. And we're not surprised that he's been an impactful player, but maybe he'll become really one of the more truly impactful scoring transfers in the entire country. Dickinson had 20 and 10. He had a bucket with like a minute 20 or a minute 15 to go. That was big. And then he had free throws that kind of that gave him the ultimate margin there that required Cadeau to have to shoot that 3-pointer. But it was good. And then, by the way, UNC did not score in the final 2 minutes of the game. So not terrible shot selection. I want to say Washington had a 3 in the corner that I didn't like when he took it. But overall, like, credit to Kansas, that building, that voodoo, obviously. This was, in scoring 92, by the way, the most KU had put up against an AP top 10 team at the Phog since that classic January 2016 triple OT game against Oklahoma. But that went triple OT. That was the Buddy Hield game. The last time Kansas scored at least 92 in a regulation game against a top 10 opponent, you got to go back to 2012 against the then third-ranked Baylor Bears. They had 92 in that one as well. So good win for Kansas. Some good signs for Carolina. They easily we got off to a good start in the Final Four and won because they easily were inside that 8.5 number, and they comported themselves well and made a good push in the second half. But I think there's a lot of good to take away, and just again, teams will have plenty of opportunities, more than enough opportunities to build up really, really good resumes and continue to establish their top 10 bona fides to get this game first week of the season, have it, really pop on the television and get the juices flowing as we head toward Champions Classic on Tuesday was an awesome thing.
Next up for North Carolina, that's going to be Friday's game at home with America. Next up for Kansas, Tuesday's game against Michigan State. That's in the Champions Classic down in Atlanta. We'll spend a few minutes on that toward the end of the pod. Now, let's turn our attention to the fight on the plane. Wild story connected to Auburn's program. We'll tell you what we know. We'll do it in just a second. First, though, a word from our partners.
CBS Sports HQ, giving you college football coverage unlike anyone else.
We're talking Big Ten.
Pre- and post-game coverage.
Are you encouraged with the way that this team responded?
Along with breaking news.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
Highlights and expert analysis.
That streak could be in jeopardy here.
Sure. What was your main takeaway from this game? How impressive was his domination?
And that really changed the football game.
Let's go ahead and have some more fun.
Another wild ending.
The chaos continues.
Turn to CBS Sports HQ.
So Auburn played Houston in Houston this weekend in a matchup of the two teams ranked first and second at KenPom, but not every Auburn player was in attendance, and that's because two Auburn players, reportedly Ja'Kai Howard and Jaheim Hudson, got into a physical altercation on the flight Friday night. The flight had to be diverted. Howard and Hudson were removed from the plane. Neither continued forward with the team. Norlander, what more can you tell us about the incident that was initially described as, quote, horseplay, as if a plane filled with basketball players would actually be diverted on a Friday night because of, quote, horseplay?
All right. Well, we'll start here. So we're going to get to the game because the game was awesome. We will get to the game. But we got to start with this. And yes, that was Jeff Goodman, who was the first to try and put into context the reason why Auburn's team plane had to be turned around. First of all, last time you came across the phrase horseplay, I was racking my brain. Parrish, I don't think I had seen it in print, in digital text, the way that we did on social media on Friday. Heard it said aloud. I think it had been minimum 15 years. And frankly, this is the exact kind of term that my late great Grams used to use with me and my brothers back in the day.
Also, it's just wildly inaccurate.
I know.
But besides being outdated, like from the 1930s, it's just wildly inaccurate. It was a fist fight. It's not horseplay. My kids are in their playroom, perhaps participating in horseplay right now. These are
horseplay. That is one of the all-time.
Hey, free journalism lesson out there. Free journalism lesson, kiddos, if you don't mind, from Uncle GP.
Oh, man.
If you ever hear about a plane being diverted filled with basketball players, and you got a source connected to the program, and you call that source or text that source, and they tell you, yeah, just horseplay. Just some horseplay. Tell your source, bro, I cannot tweet that you've just diverted a plane because of horseplay, because it makes no sense and it's going to make me look like an idiot. Tell them that, and then put your phone there. That way you don't end up tweeting horseplay when it's actually a fist fight.
One stage removed from skylarking at that point. I mean, it's some real crazy stuff there. There's a couple of places we can go here. So yes, those are the two players that didn't travel with the team. The fact that Pearl didn't, after the game, Auburn wins, and we will get to the game, I promise. But they win the game. They win it in just such impressive fashion. And then Pearl doesn't even really get into the issue even more. I wonder if we are waiting on anything else potentially here, because for as much as people have viewed the incident as funny, and I get that without a doubt. I mean, you got players fighting on an airplane against each other. We're not even a week into the season. They weren't even teammates. Goodness.
The transfer portal strikes again. I hope you're happy.
There was a picture sent out before the plane took off, and it was a smaller private plane. But like you got big dudes, wrestling around, going after each other on a plane. Like, that's actually legitimately dangerous. The pilot deemed it bad enough to turn the plane around, which is not that is a significant step to take. In fact, not a credit to the local Birmingham affiliate that was able to obtain the air traffic control call. This is legitimate here. Nada, can we play this real quick? I think this is a composite of what the pilot was speaking to with air traffic control on Friday night when they were determining that they were going to turn the play around. Go ahead, Nada, play this real quick.
Yes, sir. We have got an altercation on board. We knocked to declared emergency and land. We got a bunch of basketball players fighting. The flight deck is secure. The threat level is contained for the moment. We just had police on the ground, and we had two players that got into a physical altercation, clothes were ripped, and one bloody player. And Center 2681, it's kind of crazy. Were we direct Montgomery?
Okay, so they originally were going to redirect to Montgomery.
It was like all I heard was horseplay. Hey, come on, pilot. Come on, captain. Come on, Sully. I wonder if that was Sully.
It wasn't Sully.
You don't know if it was Sully.
I'm pretty confident it wasn't. I'm pretty sure Sully has retired from the aviation business.
Sully would have handled this. All right, Sully would have handled this.
Sully could have gotten the plane to Houston.
Hey, Captain. I heard a lot of words. Could have just used horseplay. Hey, air traffic control, we got some horseplay up here. I don't know why you had to use all those words when you could have just used horseplay.
So to bring the plane back, they asked for police on the ground when they got there. I actually have a buddy who is a private or has been a private plane pilot, and he said depending on the situation, this could be a federal. There could be a federal violation of law in nature in landing the plane. And so I'm bringing this up to say Pearl didn't speak about it after the game. We don't have further clarification. The university, after initially indicating to me it would be releasing a statement, still has opted against releasing a public statement against this. I don't know if there's more fallout or not from these two players, but it is wild stuff. In fact, it is so wild. Nada's got another one here that this issue has jumped the podcast network within CBS itself. Apparently this came up because Chip Patterson could not help himself on the Cover 3 podcast. Nada has that in the holster as well. GP, brace yourself because it's not just Chip Patterson, but Tom Fornelli is also involved in this as well. Go ahead, Nada.
You landed the plane, you get to reset, and then
it wasn't because the team was fighting.
Because the team was that's an Auburn basketball joke. Watch out, Gary. We're coming for you. We're gonna make enough college basketball references over the course of the next 7 weeks that we're coming for you. Watch out. The idea that an Auburn basketball team fight led a plane to have a safety emergency is objectively hilarious.
What's the point of having a private plane if you can't fight on it? Right. Just keep going. And when you land, you'll deal with it. It's not like they're terrorists. They're just teammates. Just keep going. You won't hear this on the Guy in College Basketball podcast. They won't go this in depth. Rank Illinois, Gary, you coward.
Hey, I co-sign Fornelli. Keep it moving. They weren't trying to fight the pilots. They're just trying to fight each other like good teammates sometimes do.
It's unreal that this is a story. It just this feels actually very college football-ish, and the fact that it's impacting college basketball in the first week of the season. Yeah, and Fornelli with the Illinois shot across the bow there. GP, Illinois still not ranked in your top 25 and one. By the way,
not yet, but I'm paying attention. If they get there, they'll get there.
Okay. Any other takes on the fact that we have arguably maybe the best team in the country have an intra-team fighting again with guys that have known each other maybe 4 months total, getting into it on the plane? It's just unreal.
Well, as I wrote in the top 25 and one, and then of course Auburn goes and wins the game. Who is better, maybe in the history of the sport, at coaching through chaos than Bruce Pearl? This guy has been investigated 5,000 times. He's had
Bill Self has navigated some stuff as well.
Bill's great. Bill's also great.
Can we get a couple Kansas players fighting on the plane? Let's get 3 of them. Let's see how Kansas then responds. Can we up the ante here?
I mean, Bill has opened seasons with his 5-star freshman just crashing cars, and then having to be ruled out because he shouldn't have been in the car. Bill's great at it as well. But BP been investigated 1 million times. He's had assistant coaches get show causes, get felony charges. He's had players suspended by the NCAA. He's been suspended by the NCAA, but he's almost never not really good. It just doesn't. I linked the video. There's a video of BP celebrating after the win, and he's yelling to what appears to clearly be some Auburn supporters that he's familiar with. And he's like, "That's Auburn being Auburn." I'm like, buddy, there is nothing more Auburn being Auburn than having to divert your flight because you got 2 dudes fist fighting, but then just continue on to Houston and knock out Kelvin Sampson's team on the road.
SEC hoops coming for SEC football. It really does it does mean more. Pearl said in the presser afterward, quote, "This is going to be one happy ride home," end quote. Chef's kiss there. Let's get to the game. Holy crap. By the way, Auburn fans want to fight me even more than the Auburn players wanted to fight each other. I put the Tigers 27th in my preseason rankings. A lot of these fans seem to believe that I'm going to update my rankings weekly. Not going to happen. However, I will take the mea culpa in the short term. Let's see if Auburn can continue this, because now we are talking about the number one team at Ken Palm. Auburn leapfrogged Houston, and they did it for a variety of reasons. The biggest being the freshman to burst onto the scene. Now, he was highly regarded 5 stars coming into Todd Pettiford, but he hit 5 threes in this game. It felt like everyone was worth 4 when it went in. He had a game-high 21 points. He didn't have a turnover, and he got 21 points in 24 minutes. On post-game radio, I saw this passed along, I believe, by Justin Ferguson, who covers Auburn locally. The quote on Pettiford from Pearl was, quote, big nuts, end quote. And he ain't wrong about that. Incredible. Auburn was outrageous in the second half. Outscored Houston by 12 points, dropped 46, or by 10 points, dropped 46 on Houston in the second half, hit 7 of its final 8 shots, and was able to shoot 57% in the second half. If you listen to Friday's preview episode, I noted that Houston was coming off a season in which it led the country in field goal percentage defense and scoring defense, and that hadn't happened in men's D1 when one school led in both categories in 40 years. For Auburn to do this, after all of the playing stuff, Janai Broome was outrageous from the field. As 20 points, I think he missed, 1 or 2 field goals total, had 9 rebounds. Him and Pettiford combined for 31 in the second half. Chaney Johnson, he had 11 and 10, and his presence in the first half was crucial and critical. Auburn had 39 total bench points. It was awesome stuff. Auburn fans, every right to crow. Your team looked as good as it possibly could have, considering the circumstances and the opponent. It was the first time Auburn had beaten Houston since 1962, by the way. And, you know, Bruce Pearl has reached the point where he is attached to so many either Auburn firsts or Auburn bests. And this was an Auburn best and a first. Never before had Auburn defeated a team ranked as high as number 4 in the AP Top 25. I checked the Auburn game notes after this. This is actually genuinely surprising. You figure maybe you sneak in a top 10 win here or there, but the exact wording here is the win over 4th-ranked Houston is Auburn's highest-ranked regular season non-conference win in program history, topping the Tigers' wins over UAB in 1984 and Louisville in 95 when both teams were ranked 13th. So the highest-ranked non-con win ever, comfortably for the Tigers, and that's big-time stuff there. Pettiford was a revelation. I'm intrigued to see if he can, watching the game, like Tyrese Maxey was a good freshman at Kentucky, but his best game was his first big one in the Champions Classic, and he never was able to really duplicate that. I don't think that'll be the case with Pettiford. In fact, if I knew he was going to be this good, Auburn fans, half serious, half joking, I easily would have put your team in the top 20. He was awesome. Can he be that kind of guy moving forward? Is he going to turn into what was not predicted to be? Is he going to be one of the 5 most valuable and potent freshmen in the country? I don't know if he will or won't, but I know that had they not had him on the floor, I don't think Auburn would have beaten Houston on Saturday night. Instead, it gets a big-time win, and what will probably wind up being one of the 5 most valuable wins come Selection Sunday, because even though it wasn't a true road environment, it was a de facto road environment, and I don't think too many other teams are going to get too many other wins against teams that are more likely to be more highly rated than Auburn taking down Houston.
You mentioned Auburn scored 46 in the second half. Like, I don't know that anybody else will do that against Houston.
I agree with you.
All season. Auburn shot 52.9% from the field in the game. I saw this. Somebody had previously shot 52.9% or better from the field against Houston only 4 times in the previous 7 seasons combined. That's from Nathan King, 24/7 Sports. So we're in this position where we're trying to figure out, does this say more about Auburn or does it say more about Houston? I think given what Auburn had done in its season opener, to back it up with this, despite the off the court distractions, is pretty impressive. Like they look the part. I moved them up, I believe, to 3rd in the top 25 and 1, now behind only Kansas and Alabama. I believe Auburn is now 1st at Ken Palm.
Yeah.
But I do think it's important. You know, with Houston, we've reached the point where they're the maybe biggest benefit of the doubt program in America. Right there with Gonzaga, Kansas usually. Just like you just believe they're going to be good because the same guys as the coach. And these players, they might not have a bunch of 5 stars to connect next to the name, but we've seen it before so many times. In 2000, I continue with it. Like they have had All-American guards consistently for a while now.
Yeah.
2021, Quentin Grimes, he was a third-team All-American. 2022, Marcus Sasser didn't make an All-American team that year, but the following year he was a first-team All-American, and he was on that 2022 team. So then you had Sasser, and then you lose him. Jamal Shead steps up, first-team All-American. Is there an All-American on this team?
I think there's a chance. I mean, Cryer didn't have a great game, but I think he's the nominee. He's the candidate. He's going to have to be more consistent. But I would say this: I don't know if there will or there won't be. Even if there's not, like if you watch the game, like even like Tugler, who was out with an injury at the end of last season, was awesome. This was an awesome weekend in college hoops, and it's the first day when we got so many more that are coming. GP,
we have more weekends.
Oh, we got so many more weekends of college hoops this season. I can't wait. The fact that this was the first one that was this good is really inspiring. The energy in this game from the first possession to the last was phenomenal. It's become a cliche to say this feels like an Elite Eight game. This felt like a freaking national championship game with how tough these teams are playing and the big shot after big shot that Auburn hit. So I don't know if Cryer is going to be an All-American or not. He's the most likely candidate. Uzan fouled out, Milos Uzan, the Oklahoma transfer, but he had some good moments there. There's a lot to be inspired by for Houston. And frankly, I don't know if it'll be aberrational or not, but the fact that Auburn went on a shot-making spree, the likes of which Houston might not face again, like they really did get him. And I'm not really dissuaded whatsoever off my preseason position on Houston. I'm obviously nudged a little bit by Auburn, no doubt about it. I faded them going in because they were a trendy top 10 team, and I saw the pieces they had coming in. They returned some good spots, but I took a chance and thought, loaded SEC, maybe Auburn's going to take a step back. Obviously, no indication of that whatsoever in the first week.
I agree with you. LJ Cryer is the most likely Houston All-American, but this is his fourth year in the Big 12, and he has never previously even made an All-Big 12 team, I don't believe. So you're asking him. I don't think they're actually asking him like, we need you to be All-American, but there has been a string of All-American guards throughout this incredible Houston run. And it's at least possible that they don't have one this season. And we might, again, just possible, we might look up in January or February, and maybe Houston is more top 20-ish as opposed to top 5-ish. And we say, well, should have probably realized you're not going to lose Jamal Shead and just not skip a beat. But it's early. We'll see. Next up for Houston, Wednesday's game with Louisiana. Next up for Auburn, also on Wednesday, a game against Kent State. Before we get to the Todd Golden story, I did want to bounce around a little bit and just touch on some other notable results from the weekend. And I want to start, if you don't mind, with the Veterans Classic, not because we had ranked on ranked, but because there was just some interesting storylines that came out of it. And I was there on Friday. It's always just an incredible experience just being at the United States Naval Academy, particularly on a Veterans Day weekend. Those young people are so impressive. Maryland Governor Wes Moore was in attendance. He's somebody who's already being listed as a possible Democratic nominee for President of the United States in 2028. So it was cool to see him. The first game was VCU, Boston College. VC won it 80-55, blew BC out of it.
Yeah.
It looked really good. BC got there to the game late because of traffic. This was sort of funny. Like they only got there about 40 minutes before tip-off, and VCU was on the court 90 minutes before tip-off. I can't sit here and say that was the difference in the game, because I think the difference in the game is just VCU's good and BC's not as. But how about this? Ryan Odom, the VCU coach. So they got there on time. Somebody told me on staff that Ryan, when he was the coach at UMBC, actually lived in Annapolis. So he was very familiar with the traffic and back ways to get to the Naval Academy. And that is the reason VCU didn't get stuck in the same traffic Boston College did, is because VCU's coach used to actually live in Annapolis and had a better idea of what to expect.
It would have been even funnier, by the way, in this travel snafu weekend if we had Auburn players fighting on the plane and you told me Ryan Odom was actually driving the bus to the venue. But I
did hear at one point he did get off the bus and direct the traffic. I did hear that. So anyway, apparently Annapolis got a huge traffic problem Friday rush hour.
DC traffic and greater DC traffic. Who knew?
Who knew? I like the team. I moved them into the top 25 and won. Max Shulga, he wasn't great against BC, but he's a very good college player. Joe Bamiso looks like he's taken a jump. Jack Clark started for Clemson's Elite 8 team last season. Philip Russell is the reigning WAC sixth man of the year. He was terrific for VCU the other night. And I thought the most interesting thing is, Shulga actually got into the transfer portal after last season, committed to Villanova. He was going to Villanova. And they got him back. So I'm talking to Ryan, shoot around on Friday. And I'm like, so how did you get him to turn around? And I love that coaches can just talk about this now. He's like, money, our administration stepped up. And it reminded me of a decision Gonzaga made a long time ago. They decided after they'd already lost Dan Munson, and now they're about to lose Mark Few, we're not going to just be a stepping stone for the big boys. I don't care what our league affiliation is. We are going to act like a big boy. We'll figure out how to pay for it, but we're going to act like a big boy. We're going to pay our coach. We're going to build facilities. We're going to travel in a first-class way. I don't care that we're in this league that isn't, under the traditional power structure. We're going to act like a big boy. We've got a brand, and we're going to capitalize on it. And the rest is history with Gonzaga. They operate a level above their entire league. This is what VCU just did. They could have conceded and just said, hey, what are you going to do if Villanova wants your leading scorer? This is the way it is these days. And they said, no, we're not going to lose our leading scorer. Just like Gonzaga once said, we're not losing our head coach to a power conference program. VCU on a smaller level just said, we're not losing our leading scorer to a Big East program. We'll pay to keep him. We'll figure it out. And that's a real important step for an A-10 program to say, we don't have the advantages of the Big East, Big Ten, SEC, ACC, Big 12, but that doesn't mean we're going to concede our players to them. We'll fight to keep them. We'll fundraise. And VCU's got a team that could not only make the NCAA tournament, but win a couple of games. They looked the part. In the second game, it was Navy and Harvard. The Robert Hinton story is going to catch fire at some point. If
Harvard can be good, it will, because he's a good player. Go ahead.
He's really good. And he is exactly, you and I have talked about this before, exactly the type of player I wrote this column 15 years ago or 10 years ago. If my son were a borderline top 100 guy, like if he's a top 5 guy and a one and done, go to Kentucky, go to Kansas, I don't care. But if you're borderline top 100, that means you can get to the NBA, but you probably won't, but you can. I would do something like this. Go to Harvard. If you're good enough to play in the NBA, they'll find you same way they found Jeremy Lamb. And if they're not, you're going to walk out of there with a Harvard degree. And, oh, by the way, you'll probably be the most talented player, not only on your team, but in your league the entire time you're in college. This is what Robert Hinton did. He's from Los Angeles area. It's helpful, of course, that his dad's a 2-time Ivy League graduate, mom also highly educated. He is of Taiwanese descent. There's a Jeremy Lin connection there. He's a young man who's been a basketball player his whole life. You know what he told me on Friday morning? For as long as I can remember, my dream has been to go to Harvard. I never dreamed of going to Kentucky or Duke. My dream has always been to go to Harvard. So here he is. And he was 11 of 19 from the field, 26 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists against Navy. He's now averaging 26.5 points. And he seems to have a real self-awareness. He was like, yes, I could have gone to one of those power conference schools. And, because he just scored like 28 in a season opener, 27, 28. You know what he said? And in my season opener, if I'd have gone to one of those big schools, I'd probably been sitting on the bench. Certainly wouldn't have got all those shots. But I can get those shots. He just seems to understand, like the smart guy. I was talking to Tommy Amaker. I was like,
smart guy went to Harvard? Hold on, what?
I was like, Tommy, don't you wish there were 5 kids just like this? Like legitimate high major basketball players who are like, I want to go to the Ivy League and get that degree. So he's just really impressive. I love that story. And then the other side, and then we'll move on. Austin Benini got a career high 34 points for Navy. He was 17 of 17 from the free throw line. Funny story. A couple of years ago, I was at the Veterans Classic. And you remember that's when my sleep apnea, doing better, by the way. Thanks for asking. My sleep apnea had
am I checking on your sleep apnea issues?
Yeah, you have it. You don't even ask anymore.
No,
you don't even ask. You used to ask.
Hey, did I? I don't know if I ever did.
Hey, buddy, you sleeping okay? Thanks for asking.
I remember you got into a fight on an airplane on the way to the Veterans Classic, and then you showed up and you had a shiner on your eye.
I had 14 stitches above my eye, and so I was a little self-conscious about that. Going on TV with you just heard I have fun with it, right? And anyway, night before the game, the same thing I did this year. I fly into Annapolis. I just go to the little restaurant bar and I just get a late dinner by myself, and there's this couple sitting over there, and I've either got a CBS shirt on or there's something that indicates CBS. I don't know why. And they're like, "Hey, so do you work for one of those deals?" And I said, "Yes." We start talking. And they're like, "Oh, yeah, our son's a freshman on the team, and we're up here to see him. And we're from the Woodlands, Texas." And I swear to God, that's all I remembered is a nice couple from the Woodlands, Texas. So the other night, as Austin Benini is balling out, I'm trying to I'm going to have to keep doing hits on him. And it's like Woodlands, Texas. I'm like, that's him. His parent. I had dinner with his parents a couple of years ago. So I do the post-game interview with him. They happen to get down on the court and they see me and they're like, "Hey, do you remember?" I'm like, "I swear to God, I don't remember lots of things, but I remember having dinner with you guys. Good to see you again. Your son's quite a basketball player. Little guard, 5'10", maybe, probably not, but just gets into the lane nonstop, draws fouls, makes free throws. He's shooting I think he's 21 of 22 from the free throw line on the season. Just a fun little player that if Navy could somehow get into the tournament out of the Patriot League, he'd be the type of guy people, latch on to pretty quickly. I had a blast on Friday night.
Good stuff. Did they ask you about your sleep apnea or no?
They didn't bring it up. But you know what? Austin Benini's father did say? He said, "Man, your eye looks great. You can't even tell." I said, thanks for that. Norlander never brings it up. And I really did just get lucky
for a number of months.
The cut was right on my eyebrow, so it's completely covered up. It's completely covered up.
I said you should have gone with an eye patch.
I appreciate the Beninis for caring more about my eyeball than you, Matt Norlander.
Well, this is a rare podcast episode where GP wants to talk Navy hoops before Baylor and Arkansas. Let's do that now. We'll do Whiparound. Let's talk about this one kind of in standalone fashion, then I'll kind of tear through everything else before we get to the Golden story. Baylor gets the win. It was a game that was, I don't know. It was good to see Baylor respond the way they did it after getting obviously just wiped by Gonzaga in its first game of the season. And credit to Scott Drew for being willing to schedule Gonzaga and then Arkansas. You take the split without a doubt, 72-67. Baylor beats Arkansas. Arkansas only shot 25% from beyond the arc. Scott Drew was using some sort of melded zone look that was constantly shape shifting. He went to man for a little bit, but that definitely was a major factor. In fact, I think John Calipari said after the game, or at least halfway admitted as much, the zone thing kind of threw him off a little bit there. And as a result, on the other side of the floor, Baylor was able to get 38 points in the paint, which I thought was a very good development for a Baylor team that's going to be very guard heavy. To get 38 points and Big Z for Arkansas, he is not there yet. Baylor was able to shoot almost 60% from inside the 3-point arc as well. It was good stuff. They never trailed in the game, GP. Norshad O'Meara had 15 points and 12 boards. Jaden Nunn, who I thought would need to be a key factor, he had 16 in this game. VJ Edgecombe, 11 points, 8 boards, 5 assists. And even Robert Wright, who he is freshman, but there's something that he's a very good spark plug for this team if he can be that kind of player. Really, really good. Adu Thero. So they even addressed this on the podcast. They don't want to say Thero, it's Thero. So Adu Thero.
Well, when his father was in college, it was Almami Chero. Okay,
well they even referenced it. It was Jimmy Dykes, and apologies for not remembering the play-by-play guy here, but they had a whole thing where he wants to be Adu Thero, so not Thero anymore. 24 points, the best game of his college career. I mean, he was good. Boogie Fland was a plus again. He had 17. I don't know what his plus minus numbers was, but individual plus minus numbers are fake stats anyway. Nelly Davis, only 8 points on 2 of 9. He has not been the impactful player that they are going to need him to be. And we both picked Baylor to win. It got it done. A really good bounce back effort for the Bears. Again, you take a split, you get Gonzaga and Arkansas, and neither of those games are on your home floor. You sign up for the 1-1 split there. With Arkansas, as I watched the game play out, it was more okay, I feel like this team is going to be able to pull off a few really notable wins, and we'll be singing their praises and talking about what Calipari has been able to do there. But it feels very choose your own adventure. This team is going to be up and down and inconsistent. I thought that was evident even over the course of a 40-minute game against Baylor there. So we wait and see, but they are not, it's just not a unit that's gelled yet. And they look although this is the case with most teams now, when I watched Arkansas play in this particular game, and remember, they had some issues early against Lipscomb. they very much look like a team that is just getting to know each other, and the pieces they are not singing in harmony just yet. So give it a little bit of time there, Arkansas fans. But a good game, and obviously another notable game on the opening weekend.
Yeah, well, the reason they look like they're a bunch of guys just getting to know each other because they are quite literally a bunch of guys just getting to know each other. Like, more of these guys played together at Kentucky last season than anybody played at Arkansas last season. You mentioned Razorback shot 25% from three. To me, that's not the most concerning number as much as it's just 20 3-point attempts in the game. It's very early. We're just recapping, the first week of the season. But when I turned that on, it looked to me like I was watching a Calipari Kentucky team at Arkansas. That's what it looked like.
There are some vibes of that. There's no doubt.
Only 23-point attempts. And on the season now, only 32.2% of Arkansas's field goal attempts are coming from three. That ranks 288th nationally. Last season at Kentucky, these numbers are interesting and I think illustrate a point. Last season at Kentucky, the Wildcats, 37.5% of their field goal attempts came from three. That ranked 179th nationally. And he had Reed Sheppard. Still just didn't take him, right? For some context here, UConn is your back-to-back national champion. UConn, 40% of its field goal attempts last season came from three. And the year before that, it was roughly 42%. They've been above 40% in terms of percentage of field goal attempts from three each of the past two seasons while winning back-to-back national championships. And you ready for this? John never had a team at Kentucky, not one, launch more than 37.5% of its field goal attempts from three. Most of his teams were in the high 20s or low 30s. He just doesn't adapt to it. When he moved to Arkansas, if I were Cal, I swear I think I would have asked. I would have called Nate Oates if we're friendly enough. And I would have said, who would you hire? Who's the young person
Nate
you're
Oates is looking to help out Cal and league. That's the problem.
You know what? Then I would have asked people who know Nate Oates better than I do. And I said, who do you think Nate Oates would hire? Who do you think he would look at? Who do you think's the next Alabama assistant? Because I want to make him the next Arkansas assistant. I would have overpaid for that person. There's a famous clip. There's a bunch of famous clips. But a famous clip of Kanye West. And he's just popping off the way he does. And at some point he says that he refuses to listen to anybody older than him. He says only young people. He yells this. He says only young people have good ideas. So I only listen to young people. I will not listen to anybody older than me because there's no way anybody older than me has a better idea than me. Now, regardless of whether that's entirely true, yeah, I agree. Obviously you can't paint with that broad of a brush.
Yeah, you think?
Regardless of whether that's entirely true, it's an interesting perspective. And I think John Calipari, to circle this back to basketball, could really benefit from just listening to somebody younger and with fresh ideas, particularly on the offensive end. And I don't mean just add somebody to the staff who fits that description. It doesn't do any good to have somebody on a staff that fits any description if you don't trust them and you don't listen to them. So what I mean is hire the brightest young offensive mind in modern basketball and let him or her coach your offense while you just motivate, coach toughness, and fundraise. Like having awesome recruits play basketball like it's 1996 just ain't it anymore. Kentucky fans grew tired of it, and Arkansas fans will too, unless you could win enough to offset that frustration. And oh, by the way, at Kentucky, under Mark Pope, they shot 24 threes in game one and 36 threes in game two. The Wildcats' percentage of field goal attempts from three-pointer range through two games under Mark Pope is sitting at 41.7%, and that is identical to UConn's 2023 national championship team.
You're busting this take out of the box too early, man, because you know that you're going to be able to go back to this thing multiple times this season. So I agree with you.
Sounds like a Champions Classic column on.
That's
they're not even in.
They're not in the Champions. Yeah, they're not in the Champions Classic.
I've done that a few times already. Like I go to look up. Like I've done that a few times. Like what I was about to say there is sounds like a column I could write after the Champions Classic if Kentucky doesn't win. And then you have to remind yourself John Calipari is not there anymore, so we'll have to save that. I was like looking up something. And I was like on Arkansas, and I went back to Arkansas, and I was like, well, that's not Cal's team. It's still, I've caught myself a couple of times. Yeah.
I hear you. All right. I'll true up around fashion here. I'll just run down all these results, and then you can, if you have any lingering takes, let me know. I'll start with Gonzaga, Arizona State, which if Arizona State had actually pulled off this upset, obviously would have been much higher in the show, but it didn't happen. 88-80 on Sunday. Awesome environment. A really good game out of ASU, particularly an ASU team that, got destroyed in an exhibition against Duke, but Hurley even said afterward, he was like, this wasn't for fun. Like, we were trying, we got our asses kicked, and this is atrocious. I'm not happy about it whatsoever. They had a good showing. They were really game for it. Really well, a lot of big shots made in this game. But Gonzaga ultimately pulls away. Ryan Nembhard, 13 points, 11 assists, played well there. Caleb Battle, 19 points, all of them in the second half. He had himself a ball game. Our guy, by the way, in his I believe on his 5th school here, rocking number 99 this season. I kind of dig it, to be honest. And then Braden Huff, 21 points off the bench. He was significant as well. So a good win for the Zags, a truly hard fought win in an incredible environment. Bobby Hurley is in a hot seat season, but this dude has never once ever been afraid about non-conference scheduling. He willingly signed up to go and play at the Kennel when he knew he would not have a team that was going to match up to Gonzaga. He did it anyway, and they played really, really well. So that was a good sign in a loss. Elsewhere around the weekend, I didn't
just
see
real quick
any-
on that.
Okay.
I would give Bobby credit for going to the Kennel. Like, Scott Drew did it in downtown Spokane. John Calipari did it in downtown Spokane.
Yeah.
Bobby was like, let's go to the Kennel and see what happens. I know it didn't end well, but his team competed, and I just respect being willing to go in there.
Tennessee beat Louisville 77-55. Did a solid with the wife and kids, so we actually hit up the Peabody Museum in New Haven. So thankfully, the free Wi-Fi in there. But I kid you not, GP. In fact, I took a photo. I'll put it in the no context preview. I'm literally standing in front of a dodo bird recreation, if you will. I took a picture of it, watching a little. I tried to catch it, like checking a little bit here and there. How's this game going? And it was Tennessee the whole way. Zakai Ziegler and Chaz Lanier had 19 apiece, and doing some reading afterward. Just Louisville, just offensively a bit stagnant. No starter scored 10 points there, so not the kind of effort or performance you wanted out of Louisville. But Tennessee's also really, really good, and so that's a nice road win for them. Dayton, we mentioned VCU. Dayton out of the A10 gets a home win on the back end of their series with Northwestern, 71-66. No Brooks Barnheiser did not play for Northwestern, but Nick Martinelli had 32 in the losing effort. A balanced effort from Dayton, and that's a win that could be crucial come March. Even though it's home in Northwestern, we don't know if they'll be a tournament team or not. You get a win like that, you don't want to spoil it. Going back to Friday night on CBS Sports Network, New Mexico won 72-64 over UCLA. I watched the majority of this game, and I tell you what, you and I both had UCLA ranked in the preseason. I had them top 20 level, and they may well get there, but I didn't like what I saw at all. Tyler Bilodeau had 23, and no one else hit double figures for UCLA. Sky Clark and Kobe Johnson were okay. They were fine. But this is what the team I saw was just not the team that I think Mick Cronin thinks he has a year after. Remember, UCLA was 16-17 last season, and now the thought going in was the vibes had totally changed. They had upped their talent overall. Hell, New Mexico lost a lot of talent, and they won 72-64 in Henderson, Nevada. Nelly Jr. drove 16-12. Donovan Dent had 17. That's a huge win for the Lobos. A couple of other results here, GP. San Francisco beat one of my trendy teams, Boise State, 84-73. All 5 Dons were in double figures that started. That was good stuff from them. 22 from Malik Thomas. These are the type of wins. Now, there's still so much more work to do, but I easily had San Francisco in my preseason top 100. Very confident in them being a top 3 team in that league. These are the kind of wins where if you can get them, and Boise State's going to be what I think it's going to be, and that's an NCAA tournament team, maybe the WCC, maybe can be a 3-bid lead this season. And then 2 more. One, Wake Forest beat Michigan on Sunday, 72-70. Michigan went way dry in the second half, sub 35% from the field. And they did not score a field goal, I guess, in the final 3:45 of the game or so. Wake Forest came back after getting off to a slow start. I was double boxing that with my just atrocious Bears. Don't even get me started on this. I was like more engaged in the Wake Forest Michigan game than the Bears game, which seemed unthinkable to me before they went and scored 3 points against maybe the worst team in the NFL. Awful. Hunter Salas had 18 points for Wake Forest, including 2 free throws late to secure the W. And then Trevon Spillers, 14 in the second half. So that's good for Wake Forest. I was actually inspired by both teams. One's got to win, one's got to lose. I think both of them are top 20 quality. And Wake Forest, which has not been shooting the ball well to start this season, it overcame some good stuff. And then how about a mid-major shout out? North Florida. Wondering if they will be in any kind of consideration for GP's top 25 and win. The Ospreys are 3-0 with 2 wins over high major opponents. No one else in the country can claim the same. This is Matt Driscoll, who has a team that was picked 7th in the ASUN in the preseason, I believe it was. They're 3-0. They opened the season. Actually, they opened the season on Monday, winning 74-71 at South Carolina. We actually have a clip of Driscoll's pregame speech. Nada, can we hear that? Highly motivating stuff. So they follow that up, GP. They do that. Then they host Charleston Southern this past Thursday. They win 90-66. Driscoll figured it worked for game 1. Here's what he did before game 2. Nada, can we play this, please? Says they get to 2-0, and then on Sunday they play at Georgia Tech. The Ospreys started the year at 253 at Ken Palm. They're now 139 here on Sunday night because they dropped 105 points on the road against the Bees. And you know what happened? Here was a look inside that North Florida locker room pregame before they got to 3-0. Not to play it.
Going from 253 to 139 in a week is wild.
It is. That is. I don't know this to be a fact, but I'm going to presume it is so. I can't imagine there is another team that has made a bigger jump in Ken Palm from day 1 of the season to now we are 6 days in than your North Florida Ospreys. And Driscoll, by the way, this is the team that had Chaz Lanier, who's now at Tennessee. They don't even have their best player anymore, and they get off to a 3-0 start. Will you give serious consideration to the only team in the country, not just with 2 high major wins, they both came in true road environments?
No.
How dare you?
No, because you haven't done anything yet to make me think you're actually one of the 26 best teams in the country. They got
Georgia. Hold on, they have Georgia on Tuesday at Georgia. I genuinely, if they win at Georgia on Tuesday, I think you got to put them in there.
Well, I think you're wrong. You're the same guy who's got Iowa State ranked 47th. All right.
No, come on. Not that bad.
Not here for your ranking advice. All right. No, it's an amazing story. It's not top 25 level yet. Probably like if we're just being honest, probably won't get there. But hey, can't do better than this. 3-0 start. Georgia coming up on Tuesday. And how about trivia time?
Okay.
It's year what for Matt Driscoll at North Florida? Because when I looked this up, I was like, what in the world?
I'm going to say, this is blind guess. I'm going to say 14.
It's year 16.
There we go.
You know how hard it is to be the head coach at North Florida for 16 years? Like either you do well enough to get the next job or you lose this job. That's usually the way it goes.
There had actually been, I mean, we're really diving deep into the carousel scene, but there had been yes, I mean this in all sincerity. There had been speculation among the people that give a damn enough to speculate about ASUN coaching changes that he might have been on the hot seat to the point where he could have lost his job in the past 1 or 2 years. It didn't happen. He's still thriving. 16 years living in Jacksonville, running the Ospreys program. Good on him. And also, as you've heard and saw, the voice behind one of the more shared memes in all of college basketball in the past 5-6 years. That was pre-North Florida in the NCAA tournament back a few years ago.
Yeah. So we'll see what they do at Georgia. I'll keep them on my radar. All right.
I'm just saying, you tend to rank. I know you're not there yet, but you hit a certain point in your season where your rankings basically equate to an NCAA tournament resume. And at this point, North Florida is like a 2 seed. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, but like sometimes people do get caught up in that type of stuff. And like today, for instance, I get Auburn fans arguing that I should definitely 100%
I don't want to hear anything
Auburn
from you about what Auburn fans are saying. Okay, you're not even in my neighborhood. Okay,
so they're like Auburn has accomplished more than Alabama so far this season. Therefore, Auburn should be ranked ahead of Alabama. And I'm not replying because I refuse to argue about rankings on social media. But like, if I were to reply, like Memphis right now has accomplished more than UConn. By the way, so is North Florida. Should we rank Memphis and North Florida ahead of UConn?
I say you do it. Let's go.
That'll make for a Monday morning. All right, I'll do it. What do I care?
What do you
Florida
care?
won,
Like,
Memphis fifth.
you want to get actually? That's really the key to this. You want to get some attention? You put UConn at 9 and North Florida at 8 and see how that greases your wheels. Let's go.
Yeah. That is the best way to get your rankings going viral. Just not care. One day I'll get there, but I'm still not quite there yet.
All right. We do have obviously a very big story, serious story that emerged even before we got going on Friday, but after obviously recorded the podcast on Thursday night.
Yeah. Save the best for last, as they say. Florida coach Todd Golden is the subject of a Title IX investigation following allegations from multiple women of sexual harassment, stalking, and cyber stalking. We'll give you the latest on that story. We'll do it next, but first, let's get one more word from our partners.
We need the sports news anywhere.
We've got breaking news to bring you.
Then get your sports anytime you want them. Big trade news overnight to discuss.
Because we know you need sports all the time.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
A legend adds to their legacy.
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
CBS Sports HQ, anywhere, anytime, all the time.
Headline heading into the weekend, Florida coach Todd Golden is the subject of a Title IX investigation following allegations from multiple women of sexual harassment, stalking, and cyber stalking. Ugly story broken by the independent Florida Alligator. Impressive reporting from Jack Meyer and Max Tucker. According to the complaint, Golden allegedly made unwanted sexual advances to both Florida students and former students. He allegedly sent photos and videos of his genitalia to the women. He allegedly asked for sexual favors. He allegedly took photos of women and then sent the photos to the women. Allegedly started showing up at places he knew certain women would be. Needless to say, if even a fraction of the allegations are true, Todd Golden is done. And if you're wondering, yes, he is a married father of two. For what it's worth, he did publish a statement on Elon Musk app this weekend. It read as follows, quote, "For the last month, I have actively participated in and respected the confidentiality of an ongoing school inquiry. I have recently engaged attorney Ken Turkle to advise me on my ability to bring defamation claims while this confidential investigation is ongoing. My family and I appreciate the support we have received and remain confident the university will continue its efforts to finish its review promptly." End quote. Florida has confirmed that Todd Golden's status as of this moment remains unchanged. He is expected to coach the Gators in their next game. Norlander, take it from there.
Yeah, so the investigation has been ongoing since late September, and Golden continued to run Florida's program since the complaint was logged and since the investigation has taken place, and including last week, obviously, when Florida played a couple of games. And so from the university standpoint, because this Title IX investigation is not yet done, and there are literally laws around privacy and confidentiality as these investigations are happening, the school, as I understand it, looks at it as though we're going to continue on. The fact that a story has been published, and this is now made public, the allegations from a school standpoint, from a protocol standpoint, they're not going to change what has been done here. So Golden will coach on Monday night against Grambling State. He maintains, I guess his statement would say he's maintained active participation. He stopped short of denying what's alleged against him in this statement, which was obviously looked over heavily by attorneys before putting it out there. What is alleged here against Golden, quite clearly, is wildly inappropriate, creepy, and bizarre. Credit to the Independent Alligator of Florida student-run newspaper for getting two women on background, not identified for obvious reasons here, to specifically lay some claims against Golden, which are obviously troubling. And it's not that a coach, allegedly could be stepping out on his marriage. That's happened before and wouldn't necessarily be grounds for termination. But the reason why this is under review is the alleged behavior here involving either current or former Florida students. but yeah, obviously a troubling story. Golden has not yet been able to really speak out on this and defend himself. To what extent he might feel compelled to do, we wait and see on that, and we wait and see on how quickly the investigation will wrap up and what findings we will get from the school to this point. I had a few people ask me the fact that the investigation had been going on for, I guess, 6 weeks at this point, and Golden had kind of continued on. Would that indicate that there hadn't been any findings to corroborate the allegations against Golden? I don't have the answer for that. I don't know if the protocol would be for the investigation to fully wrap before that kind of action would be taken, or if something was found a week into the investigation that would be just as damning, but they decided not to take action until everything was all said and done. But if you read the story from the Alligator, obviously what's alleged here is not good at all, and also just stuff that I'm going to read directly from the Alligator. It says, quote, "There was allegedly more than one occasion in which Golden was taking photos of women walking or driving and sending those pictures to the subjects involved. Various stalking incidents also included Golden showing up to locations where he knew the women would be on allegedly more than one occasion. Golden was engaging women on Instagram by liking photos, then waiting until they read the DM before unliking the photos to avoid suspicion," end quote. How that gets corroborated, GP, I frankly don't know, and I don't know. The complaint is obviously a unique one, but that's where we stand on this. And yeah, it feels like all these stories are different, obviously, when it comes to either sexual harassment, sexual assault, even worse. But it feels like, I was thinking about this when this broke, GP, you and I doing this podcast here for more than a decade at this point, and I don't think we can get through one season without at least one story of this type of nature emerging, which is obviously a terrible commentary unto itself.
Yeah. The allegations are ugly. I think you used an appropriate word, creepy, like creepy. I obviously we'll let the investigation play out. That's what Florida is doing. And I'm certain lawyers making a lot of money have advised them, you can't do anything to him right now without facing possible recourse. So as uncomfortable and awkward as it might be, you got to let this man continue to do his job until we can wrap up this investigation.
Well, so due process has got to take its course here. And yeah, Golden's obviously going to fight on his behalf. And I think it goes without saying, he probably is pretty adamant that, that these things are allegations that are not true, but we wait and see on more to be uncovered on that end.
Well, we'll see. And I guess I'm not trying to step on you, but like, due process does not have to play out. They could fire him tomorrow if they wanted to. They could fire him yesterday if they wanted to. They could suspend him right now if they wanted to.
They would be at risk of lawsuits. Not to say that they wouldn't engage in that, but like you could wind up costing yourself a lot of money as a university if that route was taken and then it didn't go the way that you thought it would.
Well, that's exactly right. Like, he's on a $4 million a year contract. And so you could fire him now, but be at risk of having to pay that off or let the process play out and then save all those millions of dollars. And so that's where we're at. The allegations are that he's sent videos and photos. I'm only assuming there's probably going to be evidence of that. These phones, as one coach who called me Friday sort of jokingly said, if you're going to cheat on your wife, leave your phone out of it. And so we'll see, but that would scare me.
This isn't my bailiwick whatsoever, GP, but even like talking to a few folks, not necessarily, there wouldn't even necessarily be evidence there, because depending on, again, if the alleged behavior is even true, if it is, there are ways that apparently you can send images. I'm not sure if it's video, but I was told you can basically send something over Instagram that can be looked at once and instantly disappears. And I don't know if that remains findable after the fact in metadata or anything like that. So you can still allege this and not actually be able to bring physical evidence, depending on how the stuff could have been delivered to begin with. That's just some important context to keep in mind with all that. And I will also say this, Todd Golden, a couple of reporters have since put this on social media as well. There were rumors about Todd Golden and whether or not they weren't directly of this nature. They were a little bit different, but there were rumors about this that kind of floated in the ether back in March. And then Todd Golden got an extension from Florida, and the athletic director has also been responsible for a couple of hires for coaches that were subsequently terminated with abuse claims against them. So there's a lot going on here with this story and Scott Strickland, the athletic director, and Todd Golden, and whether or not Florida truly did its due diligence when it was time to opt to renew Todd Golden's contract in March, I can't say, but there's even more context and background to what led us to this point.
The only point I was trying to make is that the allegations allegedly come from multiple women and involve lots of different scenarios. I guess if there isn't some sort of evidence of this, but you were doing it, you are the most careful cheater in the history of cheaters. And you make a good point, and I don't even like using that word. I should take that back. It doesn't matter to me, and it shouldn't matter much to most, whether Todd Golden was, quote, cheating or not. That, as you pointed out, and I don't say this to but it's true. Like college coaches do cheat sometimes. You know, they're no different than any subset of any other people in America. Cheating is not the issue here. That's between, if indeed something like that did go on, that's between Todd and his wife. Ain't got nothing to do with anybody else. This would be involving students in it. Stalking, if the allegation fit. Like if he were really operating in the way that is alleged in the complaint, he'd have to be really careful to not slip up at some point anywhere. And I can't help but think this is what it feels like to me, because you're right in that statement. There's no real denial of anything. I remember when Will Wade first, it was clear there's no way he's going to survive this. And it was just like, he's just going to slow play it with the lawyers. And when I asked somebody why, they said, go find out what his direct deposit is every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks you keep your job, that direct deposit comes your way. Todd Golden's making $4 million a year. Every 2 weeks, gross, it's about $150,000. You keep the job, even if you know you're not ultimately going to survive this, you keep the job as long as you can, because every 2 weeks, gross, it's about $150,000.
Oh, we'll see how and when the story updates. My understanding is that this depends upon what the investigation finds, and from there, with the school acknowledging it and making a decision from there on out. Let's quickly look ahead, and we got to wrap up here. Got to put my boys down for bed. One news item. Tuesday night's obviously the big night for games. There's not a lot on Monday, but Purdue hosts Yale Monday night. We do have news out of Purdue, and it's not good. Matt Painter announced that 7'3" freshman Daniel Jacobson, who had won the role of a starting job, he's likely to miss the remainder of the season with a fractured tibia. That's a blow for Purdue, not one that the Boilers can't necessarily overcome and still wind up being, one of the two best teams in the Big Ten or something like that. But no Jacobson, that's a big deal, and that's unfortunate. Painter stopped short of saying he definitely wouldn't return the season, but it looks like to be a 4 to 6 month type of injury, and I think they're gonna probably bank on him not being able to return until next season. 3 games to know on Tuesday. Nova St. Joe's is on CBS Sports Network at 5 Eastern. The game was already plenty urgent, but it actually becomes even more so, GP, because Nova, we know what happened with them and the trip up. We talked about it on the show last week, and it's obviously a problem. But St. Joe's, which has frankly had some underachieving moments under Billy Lang, is now finding itself in a spot where you need to take advantage of this, because it lost at home to Central Connecticut on Friday. And because of that, now 1-1. Now you got Villanova in your building. This is a team that's got good talent on it. And frankly, that fan base, if not expecting an NCAA tournament appearance, but thinking like this really should be the year. If Billy Lang's going to be able to do this, year 6, you won 21 games last season. That game takes on even more urgency. Again, that's CBS Sports Network at 5 Eastern on Tuesday, which leads right into Kansas, Michigan State in the Champions Classic at 6:30. In between that, you'll get the college football playoff latest bracket release, as always happens. And then Kentucky-Duke, the big boy matchup, obviously there at 9 p.m. Eastern on ESPN on Tuesday night. So wish the Champions Classic kicked off the season as it has done in years past. Those days seem to be behind us forever, unfortunately. And now, for as long as the Champions Classic is going to exist, I think the understanding here is it's always going to be in either week 2 or week 3 of the regular season. Take it when we can get it, but damn, it was better when this thing actually marked the start of the college basketball season. A couple of really good matchups there. GP and I will both, I believe, at least I'm speaking for myself, I think we're both going to write columns off of those results on Tuesday night. And yeah, it's a biggie. Those are the 3 games to know on Tuesday.
Let's call it a podcast.
I think that's a pod.
Shouts to Devin Downey. Shouts to Chester, South Carolina. Shouts to Terry Teagle, legend. Huck Larnell. Thank you guys once again for watching, listening to the Eye on College Basketball podcast. If you're not subscribed, please go subscribe to podcasts anywhere you subscribe to podcasts. And by podcasts, I mean ours, specifically ours, the Eye on College Basketball podcast. There's more of us than there are of them. That should be reflected in the comments. So do that. We'll talk to you again on Wednesday morning. Till then, take care.